Hey YouTube, Ed here with Jack of all trades and welcome to another video. So a while back I did a video and one of the people who watched that video suggested that I go back and I review some of the projects that I've done over the course of time and let everybody know how they're holding up and how they're doing and things like that. Because I've built things like my buffer out of a drill and my belt sander, and of course I built my portable bandsaw table over here. And so the subscriber suggested that I go ahead and review some of those projects. So that's what I'm going to do today. We're going to take a look at some of the things that I've done in the past, and I'm going to let you know how they're holding up and whether or not I like them. So stay tuned and let's get on with today's video. And welcome back. So yes, like I said in the intro, we're going to go over some of the things that I've done in projects in the past. We're even going to go over some of the equipment that I've done in projects in the past and let you know how they're holding up and how I like them and things of that effect. But before we do that, as per the usual, I got to ask you to go down and hit that like and subscribe button down below. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you get notified of upcoming videos. And hit me with those comments. If there's something you want to see me do, like this subscriber did, I will certainly do my best to try and get it into a video. While I'm on that subject, big shout out to Louie subscriber. I much appreciate your suggestion. And as you can see, we're getting it done today. All right, so the first thing that we're going to go over is the portable bandsaw table I made. This was actually the video that the subscriber who recommended this video first watched and became a member of my channel. And he was wondering how it held up and how I'm liking it. I use this thing all the time. I am so glad I built it. Is it perfect? No, it certainly isn't. There are some things that I would change. And so some of the things that I would change is I would find a way where I could either clamp this or better affix it to my bench, because it does slide around. It's not horribly heavy. And when I'm really pushing on the blade, if I'm really pushing on it, it will slide around. What I've resorted to doing is I put a couple of screws here in the bottom of my bench and the legs just kind of hook over it, so that way when I push against it, it stays in position. Other than that, the only other thing I kind of wish this table had was a miter guide, and it doesn't have that. I don't have any kind of fence or miter guide. The only way I can cut a straight line or a reasonably straight line is to draw a line on the metal or wood or whatever it is I'm cutting and just follow that line. And you know what? For what I do, it's perfectly adequate. I'm not building the space shuttle here, and I don't need any high precision portable bandsaw table. But this is certainly getting done what I needed to get done. It would be nice at times if I had a miter guide. I'm not going to lie to you. That would be really, really nice to have. But it's a whole nother level of manufacturing, and I just didn't have the time, and I still don't have the time to get that done. Maybe in a future iteration, I might do an upgrade if I've got time and upgrade my table into something like that. So the second thing we're going to talk about in my project list is my slide under the bench welding table. This welding table has been super awesome. I love everything about this welding table. I use it all the time, and I don't necessarily always use it for welding. Sometimes I use this table just as another table, or if I'm loading up for a weekend at the cabin and I need some more bench space just to put things on while I'm loading the truck, I'll pull this table out. It's handy for more than just welding. It's like another work surface, and as you can see, my bench is pretty full of stuff, and I could actually use a little more work surface, but I'm working with what I've got. And to just have this little slide out table is oftentimes really, really handy. Now, don't get me wrong, I use it for welding all the time. That's why I built it, is for a welding table. Some suggestions, if I had to make or do things a little differently, I'd probably make it a little bit bigger. The size itself, I mean, it's useful and I use it all the time, but boy, there are times in which I wish it was just physically larger as far as the real estate is concerned. I really do like that. The drawer sliders that I got off of Amazon are holding up really well. They still fairly smooth. I can hear a little bit of grit in there from welding, but all I do is every once in a while I just take my vacuum and I'll vacuum some of that grit and dust and stuff out of there. I put a little bit of dry lubrication on the bearings, and this thing is holding up really, really well, and I'm very, very happy with it. I'm so glad that I built it. I use it all the time, and like I said, it's not always just for welding. The holes, the 5/8 inch holes for the clamps and stuff like that, those are exceptionally handy. I really do like that. And if I am doing something where I'm using the table to push and pull a lot, if I got a project on here and I'm pushing and pulling on it, this table will move a little. So what I have figured out to do is to just take one of my clamps and stick it in this last hole, and it will actually stop it from pushing in under the bench, and it works really well for that. Really happy with this. I really can't think of any other changes that I would make to this other than to possibly make it a little bit larger. All right, moving on down, I've also done a video on my Harbor Freight drill press, and I kind of picked on this drill press a little bit because it is a Harbor Freight drill press. I mean, it's the store we all love to hate, right? And Harbor Freight is not exactly synonymous with quality, but at the time, you know, I had Harbor Freight gift cards. I got them for Christmas, and I needed a drill press, and I didn't have the cash laying around to go buy a big expensive drill press. And I do believe I said in the video, this is probably one of those cheap pieces of equipment that I'll end up not breaking, and my kids will probably inherit at some point in time. And that's kind of the way this is turning out to be. I've had no problems with this thing. It always starts up. It drills just fine. If there is a complaint about it, the table is a little weak. But overall, I mean, I haven't had any problems. I haven't burned up a belt on it. I haven't had any serious issues with it. Nothing slips. It just works really, really well. The chuck's a little cheap. I've had the chuck loosen up a couple of times, but it hasn't been to the point where it's such a problem felt the need to go out and replace it. And this drill press is actually, for what I paid for it, has been doing really, really good. Even though I pick on Harbor Freight a little bit, and I know that, I still buy a lot of tools from Harbor Freight, and they are probably one of my more favorite stores. Another thing I buy from Harbor Freight is a lot of my expendables, you know, zip ties, electrical tape, mechanics wire, grinding discs, flap wheel discs, all that kind of stuff. A lot of my welding supplies, things like that, I get at Harbor Freight because it's very economical and it gets the job done. So if we move down here to my belt sander, this is a belt sander that I actually kind of made. I kind of half made it and I kind of half didn't. So this belt sander is actually mounted to a 1 horsepower jet stone grinder. So you can see here, here's the jet grinder itself, and it's actually still got the stone wheel on this side of the grinder. But what I did was I made this attachment that actually goes on the other side. I actually took the stone and the guards off, and I mounted this attachment to it, and it's a 2x40 belt grinder. I think it's 2x40, 2x40, 2x42, whatever. It's a belt grinder now on this side. And I tell you what, I built this because at the time I kind of got into making knives a little bit, and I've made a few knives, but I have since kind of backed off of that because the metal dust and particles floating around in the air really starts to bug my sinuses and things like that, and it kind of makes me sick. So I kind of had to really back off it, but I still use this belt grinder all the time. I mean, for small jobs, for sharpening knives, for sharpening lawnmower blades, all kinds of things, anything you could possibly think of. I almost turn this thing on a daily basis, and I'm always using the belt side of the grinder. I don't think I've ever put anything on the stone wheel, which is why this guard is always in the down position. But boy, I tell you what, this thing is handy. It is super handy. And I was making the plates and things like that to turn around and resell them and things like that. But when the cost of steel got super expensive, and it really hasn't gone down much, it was really not worth my time and effort to have a bunch of these plates made and then turn around and try and ship them and send them out. And the interest was kind of waning off a little bit, so I just kind of stopped making them. But if you're interested in making something like this, I do have the prints and the sketches and the CAD file, so I can send you the prints and you can actually make your own plates if you wanted to. Just hit me up in the comments and I'll try and get a hold of you or try to contact you and let me know. You can also go into my into my description down below. I've got a P.O. box address in there. If you actually want to send me a physical letter with your email on it, I will email you a copy of the prints, and you can just have them. But this thing is stupid handy. I use it all the time. It's one of these tools that I just don't know what I ever did without it. I can take my little cheap or really thrown together tool rest off of it, and if I want to, I can remove the belt, and I can remove this portion or the square head portion of the grinder if I want to, and then I can go ahead and I can put a round wheel on it. And sometimes I'll use this round wheel depending on what the job is and what needs to get done. I'll use this round wheel. Sometimes I'll put it in the wrong hole. Sometimes I'll use the square head. It just depends on what the work is that needs to be done. But I have found this thing has just been incredibly handy on more than one occasion. And there's weeks where I'll literally turn this thing on a daily basis. And it's just really worked out well for me. And if you want to see how I made it, go ahead and go back and check on my videos. In fact, I'll put a link in the videos in the description down below. It's just been supremely handy. That jet grinder is holding up like a champ. It starts fast. It never gets hot. It really does a solid job. It's hard to bog down. It draws enough power on my 110 where I can actually, if I've got a fan or something going, you can hear the fan slow down because it's drawing power during the startup. It's a solid piece of equipment, and it's just showing no signs whatsoever of slowing down. Really happy I built this. So glad I have it. Don't regret it at all. All the time it took me to figure out how to set everything up and doing the R&D and the testing and the changes I made for it. I mean, it took me several weeks to figure out how I'm going to build it. It was all worth it. I'm so glad I built it. Holding up great. I have no complaints with it whatsoever, and there would be absolutely nothing I would change on this at all. So shortly after I built my belt grinder, and I was in my knife making phase, if you will, I needed to have a buffer, some kind of a buffer, and I didn't want to put a buffer over here. So I had this old drill that was actually laying in the bottom of my toolbox. I bought it at one of my local retail centers here in town just because I needed a drill and it was cheap. I think I paid like $19 for this drill. But I made this bracket here, which I actually screwed to my bench, and I put everything in here from wire wheels to buffing wheels to all kinds of different things so that I can use this drill as more of a buffer. It's just a cheap drill, and it has to be plugged into the wall. I mean, who uses plug-in drills anymore? But it really works good. It's got a trigger lock on it. The only thing that this drill doesn't have that I wish it had was a variable speed. It's either wide open or not at all. It all depends on how hard you push the trigger, on how fast you go. So if I push it just a little, you can see it just go slow, and then if I push it in hard, it really gets spinning up. It's also quite loud, and that's indicative of it being a cheap drill. But you know what? I use this thing quite a bit. Again, if I got a knife that got a little bit of maybe surface rust on it or something, I'll buff it out with steel wool, and then I'll run it across this wheel, and I'll get it buffed back up and shiny again. And it really does a good job. And the first knife I made with that, or that I used to make that, was this knife right here. This is a high carbon steel knife. This is an old deer antler that I actually found while I was out coyote hunting, and I picked up a piece of 1095 high carbon steel. I buffed that whole blade out on this drill and buffer wheel setup right here. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it didn't take a long time, because that buffer is kind of small, but it really polished it up nice. That knife is super, super sharp. I don't ever use this knife. It's practical. I could use it, but I really like it a lot, and I don't want to lose it or damage it or even possibly break it. Kind of seems a shame to make a knife like this and not actually use it for hunting or whatever. But I'm kind of proud of it, so therefore I don't take it out and use it much. I do take it deer hunting with me just because it seems like it's the right thing to do. It is a deer antlered handle after all. All right, let's talk about my my welder. This is my Yes welder. It's an M&P 200. It's called the Firstus M&P 200. It's a 7-in-1 machine. It'll MIG weld, it'll flux core weld, it'll stick weld, it'll plasma cut, it will TIG, What else did it? There's like 7 functions on this machine that it'll do. At any rate, I use this welder all the time. Now, admittedly, I only typically use MIG, flux core, or plasma cut. I'm not a great TIG welder. I know that. I actually kind of suck at TIG welding, to be honest with you. I very seldomly ever need to do the stick welding thing, but it will stick weld. But it's a super simple machine to use. I use the plasma cutter all the time. I use the MIG welder all the time. And if I'm welding outside, the flux core welding comes in extremely handy. The other thing that's really handy about this machine is it's 110 220 compatible. I can either plug it into a 110 socket and use it, or I can plug it into a 220 socket and use it. I will say this, the plasma cut function does not work great on 110. It works, but the material needs to be pretty light because they dial down your amperage. If I stick it up into a 220 outlet, I have no problems with it. It'll plasma cut pretty much anything that I need to plasma cut with it. I've been really happy with this machine. It's had a couple of little hiccups here and there. At one point in time, the processor just kind of locked up and it just kind of stopped and it didn't allow me to use it anymore. And it was nothing different than just having to unplug the machine, let it sit for 5 minutes, plugged it back in, everything cleared up, and it was right as rain. And that only happened once. So that was the one glitch or little hiccup I had. Really glad I got this machine. I use it all the time. I really do. And it's really nice to have a plasma cutter and a welder all in one box that I can very easily pick up and carry with me. And in 220 mode, or if I'm using a 220 outlet, it gives me a full 200 amps of welding. Now, it's not 100% duty cycle. I think it's like right around 40% duty cycle, 220 running at full 200 amps. But I'm not running production welding here. Most of the stuff that I'm doing is little projects, and it's perfect for a job shop or garage situation like I'm in here. Absolutely love this machine. I'm hoping it doesn't ever break or fail on me because it has been absolutely invaluable. If you want to look at some of these Yes Welder machines, I also had a Yes Welder, just a standalone plasma cutter. That machine worked really, really well, though I had to do some modifications to the air feeding system. But if you're interested in that, I'll also put in the description down below my associate's link to Yes Welder. Admittedly, they did send me this machine, but you should know me well enough to know by now that if the machine sucks, I'm going to tell you it's going to suck. This machine has done so well that I actually sold my titanium, Harbor Freight titanium welder to somebody, a friend of mine actually, who got it because I didn't need 2 welders laying around. I kind of half toyed with bringing it up to my hunting cabin, but it would never get used up there. So I actually sold him that machine and my standalone plasma cutter and replaced it with this, and I'm not sorry that I did that. I also did a video on this. I'll post the link to the video on that in the description. Don't pick on the stick welding too much. It's a little bit on the hideous side, but the machine does work really, really well, and I'm certainly happy that I have it as part of my toolkit in my shop. So there you have it. Those are some of the projects that I've done over the past few months, past year or so. And everything I've done so far has held up pretty good. I'm very, very happy that I did all these projects. And not only were they good content for the channel, but they were things that I can use on a regular basis. And they have found themselves to be extraordinarily handy in exactly the intention that I expected them to be. So there will be more projects coming up. I just did a project where I've built a Discata. That's on a previous video here. Should have just posted here a week or two ago. That was a fun project, but I've got other projects coming up. One of the big ones I've got coming up is I am actually going to build a camper. I'm going to build a small one-man mini camper. I don't want to disclose too much, but it's going to be a really fun project. I promise I'll keep the video to less than half an hour and show you the high points, and then that camper is also going to be the subject of a few future videos. I'm going to do some camping videos where I'm actually going to go out and go camping, determine some of the things that I should have changed or maybe some of the things that I need, things like that. And I'm going to make additions and remodels to the camper and things like that. So it'll be good content coming up in the future. But if there's anything else that you want to see me doing on this channel, please let me know. And I will certainly try very hard to get those things done and get you guys the content that you want to get. I'm really having a lot of fun with this whole YouTube thing, and I'm not making a ton of money on it. I just do it because it's fun to do. It keeps me busy. I don't sleep a whole lot at night, and you know what they say, idle hands are the devil's playground. Well, if I keep my hands busy, I don't have time to get myself into trouble. So let's go ahead and wrap this video up. Again, I just want to thank everybody who's followed me on this channel and everybody who supports me with their likes and subscribes. I really do sincerely appreciate it. All my new subscribers, all of the people that give me the comments, and I've even had a few people hit that tip button down below, which is extremely appreciated. I really do appreciate that. But I never ask you for money. I mean, the only time I ever ask you for support is to go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. You can also send me a letter to my P.O. Box address, which is listed in the description down below. And I'll do my best to try and get you an honorable mention on my upcoming videos if you send me something in the mail. That is very much appreciated as well. With that, this is Ed from Jack of All Trades. As always, thank you for stopping by. Thank you to my longtime subscribers. Thank you to everybody who watches these videos and watches this channel. You guys are the ones that make it all worth it. And we will see you on the next video.